Hello, BookTube. Nothing like a mail haul to get the blood pumping in the morning. Let's do some packages and see what we can get into today. Let's start with this first one. Probably all advanced copies for 2019. 2019 is right around the corner. Okay, this is from March. This is by Peter Duffy, and it is The Agitator, William Bailey, and the First American Uprising Against Nazism. By the mid-1930s, Hitler had suppressed all internal opposition and established himself as Germany's unchallenged dictator. Yet many Americans remained largely indifferent as he looked abroad to spread his dangerous ideologies. Not William Bailey. And of course, as we saw in a couple of books in 2018, not all Americans are indifferent. Some of them enthusiastically cheered. I guess Peter Duffy is an award-winning journalist. And he tells the vitalizing story of an anti-fascist dramatic and remarkable victory against Nazism in 1935, New York City. Okay, I don't know anything about this story. And now I want to know. Fantastic. As impassive New Yorkers, among them a Hollywood movie star, a Rockefeller heiress, and the new U.S. ambassador to Norway, a future Secretary of the Navy, and the 2-year-old grandson of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, not to mention heightened security provided by the NYPD, boarded the Bremen for a midnight sailing on July 26, 1935. Protesters gathered on the docks carrying banners, chanting and singing the 19th century socialist anthem, the Internationale. To that tune, Bailey led a small group past security with one goal: to cut down the centerpiece of the evening's festivity, the Nazi flag flying overhead. Okay, so now I want to know, who is Peter Duffy when he's at home? He has my attention. Where is he? Where do we have? Who do we know from you? There we are. He's the author and journalist based in New York City. He's written 3 books of historical nonfiction: The Bielski Brothers, The Killing of Major Dennis Mahon, and Double Agent. His journalism has appeared in the New York Times, New York Magazine, the Wall Street Journal, Slate, the New Republic, and many other publications. Okay. All right, great. The American government was doing nothing to fight Nazism and oppression, so William Bailey did it himself. Okay, I'm on board. All right, so this comes out from Public Affairs in March, which is going to be here in a sickeningly short amount of time. All right, we're off to a fine start. A little pocket of history that I know nothing about. It's going to be wonderful. All right, let's see. The next one is coming to me without a pub sheet. I'm sorry, Baby Bean. Do you want to tear at something? Do you want to destroy something? Woo, your fans were happy to see you back in action. I thought it was too early for her. She's been a zombie all morning. But no. She gets excited about the mail as I do. That is absolutely true. So this is The Promise of Elsewhere by Brad Latheiser, a novelist of some renown. In fact, let's read his biography first. He's a widely acclaimed poet and novelist, and the recipient of numerous awards and honors, including the MacArthur Fellowship. And this is his 17th book. He is a professor at the writing seminars at Johns Hopkins University and divides his time between Baltimore and Amherst. I have known precisely 4 people who divided their time between Baltimore and Amherst. Those train routes, good Lord, they must be great for the creativity. This is a comic novel about a Midwestern professor who tries to prop up his failing prospects for happiness by setting out on the journey of a lifetime, all in caps. Louis Hake is 43 and teaches architectural history at a third-rate college in Michigan. There's any other kind? Let's just hurry on before the Michiganders get to me. His second marriage is collapsing, and he's facing a potentially disastrous medical diagnosis. In an attempt to fend off what has become a soul-crushing existential crisis, he decides to treat himself to a tour of the world's most breathtaking architectural sites. Probably Falling Water is on that list. The appeal of that place, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Perhaps not surprisingly, Louis gets waylaid on his very first stop in Rome. ludicrously, spectacularly so, and fails to reach the most of his other destinations. He embarks on a doomed romance with a jilted bride celebrating her ruined marriage plans alone in London. And in the Arctic, he finds that turf houses and aluminum sheds just don't amount to much of architectural tradition. But it turns out there's another sort of architecture there. Icebergs the size of cathedrals, bobbing beside a strange and wondrous landscape. It soon becomes clear that Louis' grand journey is less about where his wanderings have taken him and more about where his past encounters with romance have not. Okay. All right. The Midwestern middle-aged college professor going on a journey to find himself inevitably through sex is, to put it mildly, a bit on the familiar side when it comes to the premise of a book. But, as we've noted on this channel many, many times before, it's all about the execution. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. I also got waylaid in Rome. Rome is now. I don't know if it always has been. I suspect it always has been. But Rome is just an absolute haven for street crime. Not necessarily violent street crime. I had more pickpockets try to pick my pocket in Rome in one visit than in all of my other visits anywhere in the world combined. It's just astonishing. A thriving industry. It never actually worked with me. I was waylaid both violently and non-violently in Rome, and nothing ever actually worked. I managed to prevail in all cases, but most people I know have not. Almost everybody I know who's traveled, spent any amount of time, like for instance in the crowds in Rome, has lost a wallet or something, a watch, a cell phone in the modern time. We'll just have to see. Journey books about Midwestern professors' journeys of a lifetime, all in caps, tend to give me the impression, by about page 30, that I not only know what's coming, but that I could write it myself. And I don't like to get that impression in a book. So we'll have to hope that this one is... I have known exceptions to that rule. We'll have to hope that this one is true. Now, this next one is wafer thin. It is wafer thin. So it may be, brace yourself in the front rows, a slim volume of poetry. So I know, it's a little early in the day for that, although God knows when I'll upload this. It's a classic Steve maneuver. I get all conscientious about not keeping you all up until 1 in the morning for 40-minute long droning videos. So I make a video early in the day and then I just forget to upload it. And then it's 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and I say, oh, wait a minute, I should upload that. How can I be so bad at this after so long? I don't know. Anyway. Oh, no. Okay. All right. It's not a slim volume of poetry. It is, if anything, something that's even more alarming. It's an extremely thin novel. This is a novella. It's coming to me too late to participate in Rick's novellas in November. Just blindsided me that I didn't get to participate in that. I will next year. and we should all browbeat him into making some sort of other event that we can all do later this winter. Because what's a Canadian got to do with his time? This is a novel, but it's 60 pages soaking wet, so I'm not sure. I'm not... If you can read it in one sitting and still have plenty of time left over before your next bathroom break, it's not a novel. And novels are, in part, a journey. And journeys take time. So I'm not knocking it. I guess if you said it was a novella, if you put that on the cover, would the FSG marketing department say we can't sell that? I don't know. But anyway, it's by Melis de Kerangal. And it's called The Cook. And it's her highly anticipated follow-up to her critically acclaimed The Heart. The Cook is another ravishing, hyper-realistic work that sits on the precarious line between fiction and nonfiction, meaning it's nonfiction. The Cook, best described as a poetic profile, is the story of Mauro, a young chef, or alchemist, rather, who melts and caramelizes ingredients in the kitchen and whose life is similarly transformed along the way. A gorgeous book that has been beautifully translated from its original French. The Cook is filled with ripe, descriptive sentences that create the concisely woven story of a young man finding his path. Cooking is seen as a metaphor for life, as we follow Morrow from childhood, where he bakes his very first cakes, to his teenage years, where he begins to cook for friends, and then through a series of jobs, a failed love affair, a nervous collapse, and ultimately a rediscovery of his appetite for life. The narrative takes us from Paris to Berlin, Thailand, and Burma over the course of 15 years. And the narrator, well, it's hard for her to conceal her adoration for Morrow. Warning, do not read The Cook on an empty stomach. Okay, well, that pub sheet's pretty entertaining, pretty energetic. It does what it's supposed to do. These things are not for the general reading public. Of course, the general reading public doesn't see them, except for the tiny stretch of the general reading public that haunts this channel and demands 40-minute videos. Instead, this is designed to preview the book to a reviewer or an editor of some kind. It's designed to get their attention. Very often, about budget cuts being what they are at major publishers, very often this is just used as cover copy, and it probably will be on this. I don't see how they could improve on it. But it gets my attention. I find it hard to believe that all of that is going to be crammed in here, and I find it hard to believe that Morrow is not a thinly disguised or not disguised at all version of someone that the author knows and adores. Not that it matters. It's just as a diehard proponent of nonfiction, it always bothers me when a publishing house makes a decision at the last minute or ab initio, right from the start, to market something as fiction that is not, in fact, fiction. I see it all the time. The biggest and most hideous example is Karl Ove Knausgaard, but there was a great book a few years ago, H by Laurent Pinet, who did 7 Types of Ambiguity, that was all about Heydrich, all about a high Nazi official and his assassination, and also about the author's investigation of that historical event. And there wasn't a single comma or semicolon in that book that was fictional. All of it is verifiable. All of it can be traced to the social media accounts of the people involved. So, why not call it? I guess the publisher is thinking, if we call it an account of Heydrich's life and assassination, then it'll be in the nonfiction section and nobody will look at it. It won't be up for any of the cool, sexy awards. I guess. I don't know. Well, let's see here. So the author is the author of several novels in French. She has also published a story collection and a novella. God help us, if this is her novel, what must her novella look like? You can fit it on the back of a salt shaker. She's won a whole bunch of awards. Wonderful. And I forgot to mention that the translator's name is Sam Taylor. And he's written for The Guardian, Financial Times, Vogue, Esquire. He translated the author's previous book. I don't believe it. Sam Taylor also translated H. That I was just opining about. Okay. Oh, good Lord. All right. So this comes out in March, and it's tiny. I could read this 100 times before its publication date, so I won't do that. I won't be reading it at all until the new year, but it's tiny. I will report back on it. Then we've got a couple of cardboard packages here. And then that wraps things out. This is not 20 books. This will not be 40 minutes. All of you who've texted and emailed me in the last 20 hours saying, what is all this about a short, mannerly mail haul? We want you to natter and ramble on at enormous length. You're all in serious need of help. Anyway, let's see what this next one is. Oh, great. Okay, I requested this. Let's see what we have here. This is right around the corner. This is February. This is by Daryl Bricker and Josh Ibbotson, and it is Empty Planet: The Shock of Global Population Decline. I bet some of you can anticipate what I'm going to say. But let's see. Let's not pretend this channel is completely predictable. According to the United Nations, the world's population reached 7 billion in late 2011. For many, this landmark was seen as a clear sign of crisis, an indication that humans are reproducing unchecked, leading us into a future of increased poverty, food shortages, conflict, and environmental degradation. But as leading international social researcher Daryl Bricker and award-winning journalist Josh Ibbotson counterintuitively argue in Empty Planet, the opposite scenario should in fact be our main concern. In roughly 3 decades, the global population will begin to decline. they say. Once that decline begins, it will never end. For most of history, population decline has been the result of catastrophe, environmental events, famine, or disease. Now, however, fertility rates are falling for a different reason. We're choosing to have fewer kids. To find out why, Bricker and Ibbotson talked not only to academics and public officials, but also to scores of students and office workers, aid workers, and slum dwellers in cities ranging from Brussels to Seoul, Nairobi to Sao Paulo. Populations are already declining in about 24 states around the world, and some of the richest places on Earth, Japan, Korea, Spain, Italy, and much of Eastern Europe, are shedding people every year. We wanted to, this is the authors talking, we wanted to hear firsthand exactly what young people are thinking about the most important decision they will ever make. Whether or not they will have a baby. I guess in the author's point of view, that would be the most important decision that they're going to make. Actually, the most important decisions of your life are far more tawdry than that. Are you going to get a permanent tattoo in a prominent place on your body at age 18 that you're going to regret at age 20, and then at age 30, and then at age 40, and then at age 50, and then at age 60, and then at age 70, and then at age 80, and then 90? Or most importantly of all, the most important decision that most young people ever make in their life is, at age 16 or 17, are they going to voluntarily take upon themselves a life-crushing and life-controlling chemical addiction? Totally up to them whether they do or not. They're not getting any guidance on the subject, so that's a major decision. I've seen people make that decision one way or another. But yeah, having a baby, I guess. Empty Planet shares their findings and explores what the plunge in population will look like, both locally and globally. Okay, so those of you who are avid Steve watchers, apparently there are quite a few of you, judging by how much complaints I get if I make one video a day or if I make a short video. Can you guess what my 2 objections to this pub sheet are? We'll see. We will see. The whole point of this is to keep an open mind. We will see what these authors do to convince me. Obviously, this is a polemical work in part, so we will see what they do to convince me. I will eagerly find out when this comes out in February. But from the get-go, can you see from the description, which they obviously had a heavy hand in, if they're quoted in the pub sheet, they must have written it. But can you see what my objections would be? There are 2 of them. Can you guess what they are? Number 1, only an ivory tower academic or a blithering idiot would say that the Earth's population is declining or ever will. The human population is booming. Yes, it was 7 billion in 2011, and now in 2019, it's close to 9 billion. There are infinitely more humans on Earth than the infrastructures in place on Earth right now can support. And that number is going up, not down. That number is not going to decrease. If you spend enough time talking to disaffected millennials in Brussels, yes, you will start to think that nobody's having babies anymore, but that's not true. That's absolutely not true. And what's the second one? Book 2? Can I hear it? Can I get a little acclaim for the back seats? We're talking about human population. Not anything else. If human population were to go to 0, it would not be an empty planet. It would be a very relieved planet of all other species who are finally allowed to grow. Because the huge boom in human population, from 7 billion to roughly 9 billion, has caused humans to scour the oceans clean of all living things and eat them. It's caused humans to start to eat vast clouds of insects. It's caused humans to scour the scrublands clean. Good Lord. The homes in Asia and Africa of scenic megafauna, polar bears, giraffes, rhinos, the homes where those animals exist are now guarded camps patrolled daily, hourly, by heavily armed wardens to protect those animals from instantly disappearing from the face of the earth from rampant poaching. Because the gap between rich and poor has also increased in that time. And also appetite. Most animals, most beautiful, scenic animals, most wonderful, complex animals that exist only in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, are being wiped out at extinction level rates by people eating them. They're not selling them on the black market. They're not stuffing their dead bodies into suitcases so they can be trophies on the other side of the world. People are marching into the forest with machetes and guns in order to kill animals and eat them. You decrease the human population and the whole world would breathe a huge sigh of relief. So, but I don't think that. I think that's off the beaten track of what these authors are looking at, and they might convince me. Depends on what information they have read. They might convince me. The key to their argument here is that human population is, in fact, either declining or just about to decline, and I don't believe that. So the first thing they're going to have to do is convince, in order for their book to work at all, the first thing they're going to have to do is convince me that that's true. Otherwise, the rest of it doesn't work at all. So we will see. Empty Planet, I have a feeling that this is going to get talked about a lot. I have a feeling this is going to get reviewed widely, and I want to be part of that conversation, so I'm glad to have it. Although, am I right in saying that we have yet to hit a book that I will read? No, we have yet to hit a book that I will read, a book that, all year long. These mail hauls have consisted of me opening books, squealing about some, yelling at others, and saying for a handful, I will read this tonight, or I will put this on the docket and I will read it this week. And increasingly, as the year runs down, our mail hauls are not going to feature that. I'm going to be getting entirely, in fact, this could be a mail haul where I get entirely books which I'm not going to read for months. But anyway, let's do this last one, and we'll see. This could be it. This could be an all 2019 mail haul. No, okay, we are saved. Good. This comes out this month, I believe. Yeah, no, this comes out in mid-November. And I have already read it. This is the American version, which some of you might not know about, so I will gladly tell you about it. This is by Guy Gunnaranti, and this is In Our Mad and Furious City. This is the American version of his book. I couldn't wait, so I got somebody to send me a copy and read it a while ago, months and months ago. And I thought it was quite good. I have heard mixed feelings on this from experienced, adventurous readers, people whose opinions on fiction I trust, have come down all over the spectrum on this thing. So I'm not, and ordinarily, if I said that about a real book, I would say, but the ones who didn't like it, if I did, are just wrong. But this is a made up story, so I could be wrong. So, what have we got here? Oh, goodness gracious. The whole pub sheet is 2 blurbs. One from Booklist and one from Publishers Weekly. I'm not going to read some other hack's prose. What about the book itself? Okay, here we go. So Guy Gunnaranti was born in London in 1984. He is a baby. He has previously worked as a journalist and as a documentary filmmaker. And this is his debut, isn't it? Don't I remember that? Well, let's see. Inspired by real-life murder of a British soldier by religious fanatics, Guy Gunnaranti's In Our Mad and Furious City is a snapshot of the diverse, frenzied edges of modern-day London. A crackling debut. Oh, yeah, it is a debut. Okay, all right. From a vital new voice, it pulses with the frantic energy of the city's homegrown grime music and is animated by the youthful rage of a dispossessed, overlooked, and often misrepresented generation. Dispossessed, misrepresented, sure. Overlooked, no. While Selvan, Ardan, and Yusuf organize their lives around soccer, girls, and grime, Carolyn and Nelson struggle to overcome pasts that haunt them. Each voice is uniquely insightful and impassioned and unforgettable, and when stitched together they trace a brutal and vibrant tapestry of today's London. In a 48-hour surge of extremism and violence, these characters' lives are inexorably drawn together in the lead-up to an explosive, tragic climax. And I will gladly reread this. It's right in my will. It comes out middle of next month, so it's a perfect opportunity for me to reread it. But that description on the back cover is well chosen, because the thing that impressed me the most about this book was structural, rather than atmospheric or dramatic. Which is very, very rare for me. Ordinarily, the structural stuff is the stuff where modern fiction, especially modern debut fiction, falls flat on its face and just rolls around crying because it's hurt itself. Ordinarily, the structural stuff, which is tough to learn. The structural stuff comes either if you are a perfect autodidact and you are reading really, piles and piles of books, which this guy, for all I know, could be. I don't know anything about it. The only other way to learn the structural stuff is to be taught it, either in school or at a workshop. And in the 21st century is increasingly antagonistic towards the idea of teaching at all. I actually heard one young student here in Boston say that a teacher coming into a room and saying, I know something and you don't, and I am now going to teach it to you, is committing what she referred to my face as an act of violence. I don't know what to do with people like that. They are, I think, completely beyond saving. And unfortunately, that's widespread. Where an 18-year-old in a writing workshop, a 22-year-old in a writing workshop is going to sit there arms folded and say, well, not only can you, the teacher, not teach me anything, despite the fact that you've been shortlisted for the Booker Prize 18 times, but also I'm offended that you would think you could. and students like that are not going to learn structure. They're just not. Unless they learn it as autodidacts, they're not going to learn it. But it's been my experience that lifelong autodidacts put in that position in a workshop like that in the front row are the eagerness people. They want to. They are accustomed in their whole life to glomming up stuff that they may or may not be able to use from any source, most definitely including teachers. So that sort of surprised me about this book. It's a debut, and it's beautifully structured. Ordinarily, all the praise that I can give to a debut is usually, that's one of the things I don't say, is that it's beautifully structured. In fact, it's one of the things that I almost reliably have to say the opposite. I have to say, the character insights here, usually the prose is polished to just poetic levels, but the structure is almost non-existent, and that's very irritating in a novel, because novels are creatures of structure, mostly. I mean, you can write a novel that isn't, but if your goal is to have a plot and you are bad at plot, then you have been rushed to print before your skills were in place. And too often I see that in the made-up stories, especially in debuts, but not here. In fact, the weaknesses here were otherwise. The weaknesses here were the strengths of a lot of debuts. So, nevertheless, as you can tell from the fact that I've been going on about this is an intensely interesting book. I recommend it to all of you, and you in America, those of you in America are now going to have it on your, this is a paperback, right? Yeah, this is a $16 paperback. You're going to have this stacked on your new release tables, your bookstores. I would say give it a try. Flip through the first few pages. I don't know if I will run a review myself of this book, but it's been amply reviewed elsewhere and on BookTube. So look into it. You might find it fascinating. And that is it. That is our morning mail haul, which is almost entirely books that I'm not going to read until the season has changed, until the year has changed. So we have The Agitator, by Peter Duffy, which is about William Bailey, who was the first person to organize against one of the first people to organize against the Nazis in America. And this could step right onto the Hollywood screen, because it looks to me, on just a cursory examination of the book, like William Bailey, our agitator, was also a super hottie. so let's just call up Timothy Chalamet and get him to ham his way through a movie about the agitator. And then in interviews, he can sort of squirm all around because he's forced to go without tobacco for 15 minutes and tell his interviewer, yeah, it's about, I guess, the Nazis, who are, I guess, like, really bad. Then Brad Lathar's newest novel, The Promise of Elsewhere, about a man in a midlife crisis who decides to take to the road. Now, don't go to sleep, because the key here is that it could be good. We will have to see. You have read 1,000 books about a man, especially an academic, having a midlife crisis and taking to the road and finding an array of women there, of course, or an array of men in some cases. You have read many of those books. I have read many of those books. It's a perfect reminder to us all that we must not become jaded. It could be really good. I mean, look at Wolf Hall, Hilary Mantel. How many Tudor novels had you read before you got to that book? I've lost count of how many I'd read. The key is an open mind. Then Empty Planet, again, an open mind. These authors are going to claim that the human population is declining and is about to decline precipitously. And they're also from that description, they're also going to make what seems to me to be an incredibly contentious argument, which is that once the human race starts to decline, it will continue to decline. Short of catastrophe, I've never heard of that. I don't think that's wired into any species. Short of catastrophe, or in the case of every large mammal species that humans have ever encountered, engineered genocide. Aside from that, does a species ever just lose interest in reproducing? I don't know that that's the case. Again, I can't wait. We'll see. I will be going in loaded with opinions, and it will be fun to see which one of them the authors can supplant. That's wonderful. Then we have this thing, The Cook. It's translated from the French, but I don't think that's any excuse. it's a novella. It's really a novella. And In Our Mad and Furious City, a much ballyhooed debut from the other side of the ocean that I will be getting to. In fact, it's the one book in this list that I can say that I will probably read, although it's a reread. So it doesn't the element of exploration is gone, but who knows what I'll find the second time through. So I will get to it probably soon, probably this weekend, since December 11th, believe it or not, is right around the corner. So, but anyway, that's our mail haul. Now, I had two goals in mind. One was to keep it short. I completely failed. And the other was to upload this before 10 o'clock, and we shall see. You'll be the judge. But I'll wrap this up, and we will convene again. Thank you, BookTube.